Once upon a time, in a forest, lived a little spider. She was a very good spinner, which meant she could make webs like this one. They were big and strong and just beautiful. But making these webs took a lot of time and energy, and if she wasn't careful, she could end up with nothing to eat. So one day, she got to work. First, she chose a nice tall tree and spun a small platform to sit on while she worked. Then, she started spinning her web. It took her all day, but by the end, she had created an amazing web. It was round and doily shaped and very sticky. Then something magical happened. A butterfly flew into the web. The spider had only built the web that day, but she had already learned that a big, juicy insect like this was way too heavy for her to carry back to her hole. So even though she was very hungry, she let the butterfly go. She would just have to wait for a smaller insect to get stuck in her web. She watched as the butterfly flew away. Then she waited and waited some more, but no insects would fly into her web. Day after day, she sat on her web and watched the other animals playing, running around or flying past her web. Sometimes a caterpillar would crawl by and she would pounce on it, wrapping it in a blanket of silk to keep it from escaping. But most of the time, she had to wait. She didn't have the energy to spin another web anytime soon, so she just had to hope that her first web was enough. Finally, one morning, a big fat worm crawled right into her web. The spider had been waiting for this moment for so long that she was ready to grab the worm the second it touched her web. She wrapped the worm in a tight hug and carried it off to her hole. She was so happy to finally have food after so many days of waiting. She made a cozy little nest inside her hole and laid her eggs. When her babies hatched, they were so tiny she could barely see them. She fed them little bits of the worm until they were big enough to go out into the world and find their own food. And even though she was a very good spinner, she didn't feel like making a new web just yet. She wanted to take a break and relax. So she went outside and found a nice leaf to lay on. She closed her eyes and started to doze off, when suddenly, crunch, crunch, a big bird landed on her web. The spider's heart started beating very fast. She didn't want to be eaten, but she couldn't move. She tried to call out to the birds, but all that came out was a tiny squeak. The bird hopped closer and the spider squeezed her eyes shut. But instead of pecking at her, the bird started pecking at the web. Cling, cling, cling. The bird was taking her web apart. The spider thought she was going to be saved, but then the bird flew away, taking half of her web with it. The spider was sad, but she knew that if she wanted to survive, she needed to build a new web. So the next day, she got to work. She used the last bit of her web to make a new web. It wasn't as big or as beautiful as her first web, but it was enough. She sat on her web and waited. It didn't take long for her to catch a beetle. The spider was so happy she finally had food again. She ate the beetle and felt strong enough to spin a new web. This time, she made her web even bigger and stronger than before. And even though it took a lot of work, she was very proud of herself. She sat on her web and waited for a big juicy insect to get stuck in it. And she knew that no matter what, she would survive. End.